Hello and welcome to another edition of The Chamber right here on Citi TV, the only program on television that brings you all you need to know about what has been transpiring in Parliament. The House went for a 3-week break induced by a COVID-19 outbreak in the premises of Parliament, but we are back, and we are back large and in charge. This is The Chamber. My name is Mensah. Opoku. We'll take a break. When I come back, there is more on the program. To say this week has been thrilling, action-packed and eventful is an understatement. The House, apart from vetting the nominees of the President, has also spent time approving some of the nominees of the President as contained in the Appointments Committee report to the plenary. For more on what has been happening in Parliament, here is a recap for the week.
The retesting revealed that out of a total of 550 MPs and staff who retested, only 12 tested positive and are currently in isolation. Majority of them were auxiliary staff. This represents a positivity rate of 2%. which compares favorably with the national positivity rate of between 10 to 12%. It is my expectation that all honorable members and staff who are required to retest actually do submit themselves for the testing. As shown by the results of the retesting, the measures we put in place, including the 3-week break, have enabled our colleagues who were exposed to the virus to overcome the infection.
After 2 weeks of vetting, the Appointments Committee of Parliament cast votes on Monday on the nominees vetted so far. 22 of the nominees for various ministerial roles were approved by consensus. The minority, however, rejected 3 of the nominees, and the approval of 5 of the nominees are on hold. The nominees rejected by the minority are Minister for Fisheries Designate Mavis Harkumsin for her output at the vetting, Information Minister Designate Kojo Opoku for fueling allegations of contempt against Dr. Dominic Ayine in the election petition, and the Minister Designate for Food and Agriculture Dr. Usrefi Yakuto for supposedly assuming an arrogant posture during the vetting. The Attorney General Designate Godfred Dame, Communications and Digitalization Minister Designate Esla Usu-Ekufo, Railway Development Minister Designate John Peter Amewu, Health Minister Designate Kwekwaji Wamenu, and Roads and Highways Minister Designate Kwesi Amwakwata have some outstanding issues to thrash out with the committee before approval. On Monday, the committee vetted Henry Korte for Greater Accra Regional Minister Designate.
Of Parliament, I'm aware that laws has been passed in this House banning the use of Okada, but again, it is a matter that continues coming up, and I think there should be further engagements to see how it can be done. You cannot run away from it entirely. They are here.
Seth Champong, Eastern Regional Minister nominee.
This is an area that we have to be a bit proactive and front-load education. It is time that we got personnel within districts, municipals, and metropolitans to approach as a way of mobilizing revenue, also engage with developers.
And I have Regional Minister nominee George Boache.
For the first time in the country's 4th Republican Constitution, the budget statement of a government will not be presented by its finance minister. On Friday, 12 March 2021, President Akufo-Addo will present his first budget statement for his second term to Parliament without a finance minister. Ken Ofori-Atta, who has been nominated for the second time by the President to head the Finance Ministry, is unwell and currently receiving treatment for COVID-19 complications in the US. In his absence, the President is expected to appoint one of his ministers to do the presentation in Parliament. Reports suggest that Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, head of the Economic Management Team, will do the presentation. If this suggestion holds, this will be the first time a vice president will present a budget statement. Another name that has come up as a possible candidate to present the budget is Trade and Industry Minister Alan Kojo-Kyerematen. Many say the president has settled on him to do the budget presentation. The majority leader and Minister of Parliamentary Affairs, Mensah, has also been mentioned as one to do the presentation. Many believe that being the leader of government business in Parliament, he is best placed to perform the role. Labour Relations Minister Ignatius Bafewua's name has also come up as a possible candidate to do the presentation. The president will host a cabinet retreat this weekend, and it is expected that he will settle on a name to present the budget after this weekend's retreat.
Ningo Prampram MP Sam George and Asin South MP Reverend Tim Fojo presented statements on the floor of the House on LGBT rights and the need for MPs to air out their views on the matter.
The posterity of our long-held customs and culture are under siege by the vestiges of colonial imperialism looking for a foothold in our republic. We must dig in deep and defend that which gives us our identity as a people.
People see people walking in the street and holding each other in a certain way. And so, the way they are holding each other, they are violating the laws of Ghana. There's no law that prohibits two men holding their hands in a certain way. And there's no law that prohibits two women holding their hands anyway. Indeed, lawyers have an issue whether or not between women there can be penetration. And if between women there cannot be penetration, because our law says there has to be penetration for there to be a natural carnal knowledge. The question is, can you say that the practice of lesbianism between women is criminalized by our laws?
Contrary to the individual idiosyncrasies, the persons practicing LGBTQI are born so to exhibit LGBTQI tendencies. Many credible research findings have converged on the conclusion that no biological basis accounts for LGBTQI orientation and that LGBTQI is a socially applied lifestyle.
Earlier, the majority leader Mensah indicated that the COVID-19 vaccination exercise will commence in Parliament on Saturday, March 6th.
The allocation that we have to Parliament is just about 2,000 for now. And the staff strength in Parliament is in the region of about 570, and the MP is 275. What it means is that if we have MPs and spouses, and staff coming with their spouses, the space left for others will be eroded, which is why we are asking these key players, the members of Parliament, the staff, the spouses, and as I related to the police, fire service personnel, and research assistants, those of them registered, 22, to now submit themselves. That will exhaust the 2,000.
So obviously the House has been quite heated this week. We all saw the scenes. But we'll take a break here. When I come back, there is more on the chamber. Stay with us. You're welcome back from the break. This is the From the Floor segment where we delve into the major issues for discussion on the floor of Parliament in the week under review. We all know that one of the hot topical issues in the country for the last few weeks has been the matter of LGBTQIA+ rights. That matter landed on the floor of Parliament. There was an interesting debate on the floor of the House. We'll also bring you a sense of that. Join us now for the From the Floor segment. Stay with us.
Section 104(2) of the Criminal Code states, and I quote, "Unnatural carnal knowledge is sexual intercourse with a person in an unnatural manner or with an animal. The perverted actions of homosexuals, whether consensual or not, constitute a crime under Ghanaian law, as it is unnatural carnal knowledge of another. This is not the position of our law. This position of the law, Right Honorable Speaker, does not occur in a vacuum. It is a representation of our culture, traditions, religious and customary beliefs, and our morals as a country. Any attempt to depart from the current position of the law on homosexuality will be an unprecedented assault on the fabric of our tradition and culture and customs as Ghanaians. It will be an attempt to alter the very fiber and DNA of what makes us Ghanaian. The unitary position of the several cultures and ethnicity within the jurisdiction of the Republic on an abhorrence for homosexuality is testament to its unacceptability to the vast majority of Ghanaians. Mr. Speaker, there are very concerned civil society groups such as the National Coalition for Proper Human Sexual Rights and Family Values, an amalgamation of Christian and para-Christian bodies, Muslim bodies, non-religious bodies, traditional rulers and opinion leaders in Ghana, and the Advocates for Christ Ghana, a Christian civil society group. These groups have condemned the opening of the LGBTQI+ office in Accra as an infraction of the laws of Ghana. The Ghana Pentecostal and Charismatic Council, the National Chief Imam's Office, and the Catholic Bishops' Conference have all roundly decried the attempts to normalize homosexuality and advocate the change of our laws. These groups have further called on the government of Ghana to, and I quote, safeguard the laws of the country and resist attempts by any entity, local or foreign, to misinterpret and worse rewrite our laws that give due regard to the cherished culture and social values of the Ghanaian people. Mr. Speaker, the moral fiber of our nation is at stake. Our very way of life as a people is under attack by these agents of perversion. The posterity of our long-held customs and culture are under siege by the vestiges of colonial imperialism looking for a foothold in our republic. We must dig in deep and defend that which gives us our identity as a people, our culture, our traditions, and our beliefs. Mr. Speaker, we live in a world where there is growing concern for future generations because not only have we moved from accepting transgender, there are other evolving persons such as transracial, transabled, and even transnationals. The very institution of marriage is at risk if we do not stop this growing canker quickly. We cannot allow it to fester. We must, as a necessity, exercise ourselves of this vice. We must demand stronger legislation and a firm commitment from the executive to the preservation of our cultural identity as a nation, embracing heterosexuality and upholding the sanctity of marriage as a union between a man and woman. Mr. Speaker, in line with this, the six of us jointly making this statement hereby serve notice of our intention to jointly sponsor a bipartisan private members' bill to pass specific legislation by this august House to expressly prohibit and criminalize the practice or advocacy of homosexuality in Ghana. This bill will seek to further strengthen our legal jurisprudence and existing legislation on unnatural carnal knowledge to reflect the current state of affairs. It is our belief that all members of this House will support this bill when it comes before the House. We also hope to see action from the executive through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs calling to order all diplomats whose actions constitute an affront to our laws and sovereignty. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, we need to blot out this canker from our land. We are very certain of your respect for individual liberties as well as your love for our customs and tradition. It is on this basis that we call on you as the head of the legislative arm of government to make a firm statement on this raging national discourse. We are without doubt that the enormous respect you command, not just within Ghana, but across the world, based on your many years of meritorious service to humanity, would add great impetus to this fight of ours to preserve that which is right, that which is just, and that which is holy. The future of Ghana as we know it, and the sanctity of marriage, depends on us. May posterity remember us kindly for our stance in defense of what is virtuous and right.
The fact that some jurisdictions recognize certain ways of life as acceptable standard may not necessarily make it acceptable in another jurisdiction. Globalization is purposed to augment the strength and values of nation states, certainly not meant to compromise the cultural and moral values therein. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution of Ghana clearly prescribes homosexuality, lesbianism, bestiality, and such acts that defy the core tenets of our beliefs, values, customs, and traditions as a people. On the cultural objectives of Ghana, Article 39(1 of the Fourth Republican Constitution of Ghana clearly states, and I quote, "Subject to Clause 2 of this article, the state shall take steps to encourage the integration of appropriate customary values into the fabric of national life through formal and informal education and the conscious introduction of cultural dimensions to relevant aspects of national planning." End of quote. Article 39(2) further indicates, and I quote, "The state shall ensure that appropriate customary and cultural values are adapted and developed as an integral part of the growing needs of society as a whole, and in particular that traditional practices which are injurious to the health and well-being of the person are abolished." End of quote. Fortified by Article 39 of the Constitution of Ghana aforestated, I strongly contend that the practices of homosexuality, lesbianism, and bestiality are potentially detrimental to the health and well-being of persons who may engage in such acts, and accordingly must be deemed as inappropriate practices by the peoples of Ghana. Furthermore, Section 104 of the Criminal Offences Act 1960, Act 29 prescribes unnatural carnal knowledge. Mr. Speaker, some activists have contended that the provision of unnatural carnal knowledge is anachronistic and no longer sufficient to adequately address the emerging trends of LGBTQI matters in the country. Therefore, that school of thought is urging further strengthening of the laws to make them more robust, more encompassing, and more stringent in dealing with the practices of LGBTQI. Among the multi-religious faith and very traditional and customary values across the country, an overwhelming consensus is established on the position of the nation in utter rejection of the practices and advocacy of LGBTQI, in conformity with the customary law and tenets of faith in respect of public morality. Contrary to the individual idiosyncrasies, the persons practicing LGBTQI are born so to exhibit LGBTQI tendencies. Many credible research findings have converged on the conclusion that no biological basis accounts for LGBTQI orientation and that LGBTQI is a socially applied lifestyle. We live in a majoritarian society with consensus on customs and acceptable standard of public morality, which consensus has determined the practices and advocacy of LGBTQI by the relative minority in society as incongruent with our norms. The position of the President, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo, in line with upholding the laws of Ghana against the pressures of LGBTQI, has been made without equivocation, just as was made by some former presidents, particularly President John Kufuor and President John Evans Atta-Mills. While I commend the security agencies for their efforts in the closure of the LGBTQI office in Accra, I hereby call for a sustained and effective collaboration among all relevant stakeholders to curb the threat to our public morality. Mr. Speaker, may I conclude by urging this august House respectfully to build consensus on the consideration of a possible private member's bill to provide greater clarity and unambiguity to prescribe the practices and advocacy of LGBTQI in line with our customs and values as a people.
Not stop people from coming together to say they want to advocate. At that point, you are stepping on freedom of association. That is what I have issue with, and I have spoken on radio several times, and I have said that let's ask ourselves those fundamental questions, and then the fact that a view is not popular. Gay lesbianism is not a popular view in Ghana today. So, because it's not a popular view today, should we punish anybody expressing that view? No.
You can't punish somebody for expressing that view, but you can punish him for practicing it. If they practice it, you can arrest them, you can prosecute them, and they have no defense if it is proven beyond reasonable doubt that that is what they are engaged in. But if they say they want to open an office, they want to draft a bill, they want to come and meet the parliamentary caucus on gender and others, and to present an argument why we have gotten to a point in Ghana where they feel that such a position should be accepted by the laws of Ghana, that cannot be stopped. Stopping that is a clear violation of our own constitution. So let's be careful. Today, it is gay, lesbian, transgender position that is unpopular, and you are criminalizing and punishing it. Tomorrow, you know, something that today is perfectly legitimate can also become an unpopular position. And then we will say we want to punish those who share that view. So I know that this is a very unpopular position to take, but I take a position that let's separate freedom of expression, let's separate freedom of belief, let's separate freedom of association and the practice of gay, lesbian, transgender, and the criminalization of gay activity. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, indeed, and I challenge people to go to our courts on this matter. Our own law, section 99 and 104 of our criminal code, is very limited. It is proscribing unnatural carnal knowledge. And the same criminal code defines what unnatural carnal knowledge is. It says that unnatural carnal knowledge is where there is penetration. Okay? So it means that unless you are able to prove penetration, you can't really punish anybody for anything. And so in other jurisdictions, they have tried to change the law to prohibit everything else that is associated with gay and lesbian activity. Now, if you don't amend the law, exactly. So the issue then is, the law says that where there is unnatural carnal knowledge, and unnatural carnal knowledge is where there is penetration. Now the question is, where some people live together, but you can't prove that they are penetrating each other, you know, now and then. I can't say it. They are penetrating each other in natural areas. Mr. Speaker, it becomes difficult. I saw people see people walking in the street and holding each other in a certain way. They say, oh, the way they are holding each other, they are violating the laws of Ghana. There's no law that prohibits two men holding their hands in a certain way. And there's no law that prohibits two women holding their hands anyway. Indeed, lawyers have an issue whether or not between women there can be penetration. And if between women there cannot be penetration, because our law says there has to be penetration for there to be unnatural carnal knowledge. The question is, can you say that the practice of lesbianism between women is criminalized by our laws? Because we have to stretch the definition of unnatural carnal knowledge, which definition is already provided for in the criminal code. So if we want to prohibit it, then this House must come together and propose legislation that adequately captures the practice of gay and lesbianism and then proscribe it. Otherwise, as it is now, I can assure you that the national anthem, if you read the national anthem carefully, if you read pledges that we were reading at school, even oath of officers, there is always a recognition of the existence of a supreme being. Now, I don't intend to preach the house. I think the Honorable Moses has done a good work with that. There is always a consideration for morality and godliness, and that cannot be lost on us as a nation. It cannot be lost on us as a nation. We recognize that there are other parts of the world when this thing is recognized, it's being practiced, it's being preached, even to their kids. But it should not happen in our parts of the world. And I couldn't have agreed more with the Honorable Mensah, who emphasized the point that we are in Africa. And so we think like Africans and we behave like Africans. Now, I'm sure the mere talks of considering application of this in Ghana itself will cause our torchbearers to shake in their graves. Our torchbearers who found this nation were strongly against such practices. It's amazing. Well, I would have thought that with the advent of civilization, we will rather be departing from this. I'm surprised it's rather becoming a topic for us to discuss. So I'm against it. True and true, I'm against it. And I'm sure we on the majority side, we are totally against it. There's no need to play politics with it. And to that extent, I want to commend the joint statement and the fact that the statement came from both sides of the House. And that will send a signal out there to the public that indeed it's not about one side of the House issuing a statement or reading a statement. Both sides came together, decided, and came to an agreement, and issued the statement. Speaker, I'm told that there are health implications. When a man goes out there to have sex with a fellow man, there are health implications. And there are scientific publications that prove to this. So why would we even think about doing this? So it's something that we shouldn't consider at all. But come to think of it, when I heard my colleagues make reference to the Criminal Act, and they make reference to Section 104 and the likes, putting matters in context and also holding the view that there is no clarity in that law, then it behoves on us. Now that we have the private members bill, it behoves on us to do the needful. We should push for the necessary amendment to make the law clear, to make the law biting enough. But I'm also against any attempt to perpetrate violence on anybody who believes in such beliefs. And the Honorable Suhidi could not have said it, but even criminals, when they are caught in the act, their rights are respected and they are prosecuted according to law. I do not know a country like Kenya where I'm told most of their provisions in their constitution has been tested in the law court. And my colleagues, the lawyers are here. I don't know how often the Section 104, the Criminal Act, has been tested in our law. And then appreciating the variations and the limitations of, for want of a better word, the lacuna that exists in the law, which will inform us the need for us to get it couched in a manner that would deal with the dictates of time. I don't know how long we crafted the Criminal Act. And I'm sure with the passage of time, it has become important that we review it, revisit it, and make it more effective. Speaker, as I earlier intimated, I don't intend to belabor the point, but there is also a possibility of this act facilitating incest in our country. Mr. Speaker, as a Muslim, it will be unheard of for one to support this practice and still call himself a Muslim. As a Christian, it will be abominable for one to support this practice and still claim to be a Christian. Mr. Speaker, in the same vein, it will be, I think, a dereliction of duty for a human rights activist to speak about this without pointing to human rights violations. It will also be a dereliction of duty, once again, for a lawyer to speak about this without pointing to the gaps that exist in our laws. But in doing so, let those arguments not be confused sometimes to mean that some are for and others are against. Mr. Speaker, let us be very careful and clear about what we want. And what we want as a people of faith, in my view, is that we do not want to encourage the practice in this country. It is religiously abominable and traditionally unacceptable. It culturally does not fit with us. But Mr. Speaker, just as this is considered unacceptable, so is armed robbery. And so are other vices in our society. Mr. Speaker, I do not think that it will be fair for an armed robber, or anybody will consider it fair, for an armed robber to be arrested and be denied his human rights or her human rights. The right to be treated with dignity. The right not to be lynched. So it does not matter the crime that one commits. Even as a criminal, one is still entitled for his human rights not to be a criminal, but to be a human of dignity, to still be preserved. So for me, when I listen to human rights activists, what I hear them say is, yes, we want it to be criminal. But it does not mean, even in its state, when some people say unnatural carnal knowledge is criminal, it does not mean when you find a criminal, you stone the criminal to death. It does not mean when you find a criminal, you beat him to death. You beat him to death. It does not mean that when you find a criminal, you expose that criminal to bodily harm. That for me is what I want us to understand. That yes, let's make it criminal, and let us ensure that the law works. But let us also understand when people say that criminals have rights. Saying criminals have rights does not mean they have the right to be criminals or they have the right to practice the crime. But it simply says that when a policeman arrests them, don't begin to slap them. It simply says that when you find a pickpocket, don't lynch him. Because you see, we have examples in this country where mistaken identity, people have suffered from mistaken identity. So once you encourage that human rights of people, the right to dignity should be met with this kind of violence, you never know when somebody will be mistaken to be a homosexual and beaten or clapped to death unfairly. When you let people feel that once somebody is tagged a gay, all his human rights are lost. He can be beaten, he can be stoned, he can be killed. You never know when wrong identity will lead to somebody you care about suffering unjustly. You never know. So let us separate the discussion.
God in his own wisdom, in doing this creation, has put some percentage of all the creation and turned them into what these same-sex advocates are advocating for. Mr. Speaker, I'm very clear as a Muslim that with over 1 billion Muslims around the world, we are very, very, very clear because in the Holy Quran, God said, and as for the two of you men who are guilty of lewdness, punish them both. And if they repent and improve, then let Allah have mercy on them. That's Quran 4:16. And Mr. Speaker, in most school of thought, in Islam they call it Sharia. You hear people say Sharia law. Sharia means law. in Sharia, all the school of thought have come to a conclusion that they needed to be treated like adulterers. And where Sharia is practiced fully, adulterers are punished by death. So you see that in most Islamic countries, when you are found in activities of same sex, when it is been proven and you are found guilty, you lose your life. So Speaker, I overheard some of my colleagues, prominently Honorable Mama Yaga, saying that yes, it's illegal, he doesn't support it, but his advocacy is a human rights issue. The United Nations says it's not a human right. It's not a human rights issue. The European Union, where I may say, in Europe, they have the most number of countries that have legalized it. Even the European Human Rights Court says that it's not a human rights issue. You cannot have a right to promulgate or to promote an illegality. The Speaker, if we are in our country now and then Cocaine Snippers Association form and said that, we are not sniffing, but all we do is that we are an association that advocates the sniffing of cocaine. Will we say that that's a human rights issue? Because they are an association to promote an illegality. In the same way, if armed robbers or highway armed robbers form association and say that, half of them, they are not the highway armed robbers, but they are association that promotes highway robbery. Are we going to say that, this is a human rights issue, they are only advocating for the legalization of highway robbery? Since now it's illegal, they are only forming the association so that they will come back that as a country we should put it in our laws that after highway robbery, it can be legalized. So that you can rob people on the highway, kill them, collect their property. So that association is a human rights association, it's a wrong human rights. You cannot have an association that promotes an illegality. And the Speaker, let's call spade. This is Africa. This is Africa. If you go to Europe and you dare talk about polygamy, like myself, if I were a European, then I rather run to Africa to practice my polygamy. Because in their environment, it's purely an abomination. But in Africa, and I say to people, from the north to south, from east to west, there's not a single quarter in Africa that is not polygamous. And we are happy being polygamous. But when you go and become a British, even if you are an African or a Ghanaian, then when you become a British, you cannot do it. And once you are there, you accept it. So why is it that when a Ghanaian becomes a British, he will accept that as a Europe or Britain, you cannot do polygamy. But when they come to Africa, they say, no. After same-sex legalizing. Why? We will eat grass than to legalize it.
This statement will not have been admitted, but in our context, that's been admitted because the practice of LGBTQI+ is alien to our culture. Mr. Speaker, recently, a minority leader, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, was interviewed, and I want to say what he said. He was asked about his opinion about this topic, and he asked a question. Have you ever seen a male goat or a male cow chasing a male goat, a female goat or a female cow? If you have seen that, that becomes unnatural. Unnatural in the sense that God, from the beginning, whether you believe in God or not, did not create it so. Creating a man and a man to have carnal knowledge. God created us to have a man and a woman to know each other, as the word of God says. So for a man to, says that I'm marrying or this is my wife, shows clearly that this is unnatural and therefore is an alien to the culture practice and norm of this country. I'm happy that His Excellency the President also came up to say that in his government or during his tenure in office, he will not allow the marriages between two same sex. That has given us comfort to know that we are all against this unnatural consequences. Mr. Speaker, I don't know of any of a member of parliament in this house that would boldly stand out today to declare and support that I am a gay or lesbian, that I sleep with a man or I sleep with a woman as a woman. If any of us here can boldly stand up and declare that is a gay or lesbian, the person should do so. Mr. Speaker, the person should own up and stand right now for us to recognize him. We have come out as a coalition of parliamentarians who are against these practices being imposed on us. And Mr. Speaker, our desire is that we will bring a private member's bill to this house, to a collective decision, that there will be clarity in our laws, that our colleague will not be seen to be asking for human rights. We are saying this human right frowns on our right as well. And therefore, as a members of parliament, we are asking all our colleagues to support this private members bill 20 to 24. Mr. Speaker, after God has created the woman, God took the woman to the man. And the man said, this is flesh of my flesh, the bone of my bone. And because of that, we call her a woman. It was after that God said, because of this, the man shall leave the father and the mother and take claim unto the wife and become one flesh. The Bible did not say that the man will leave the father and the mother and go get married with another man. The Bible did not say that. Mr. Speaker, ever since we stopped upholding the tradition and the cultural usage of our forefathers, a lot of things have gone wrong in this country. When we were young, there you go through a river wearing sandals. There you go through a river going to urinate or eat yourself closer to a river. And our forefathers were able to preserve our natural resources. We came to meet them. Any traditional cultural behavior of our forefathers that is so good and biblical must be supported. And that is why when you go to our constitution, Article 270 enjoins this country and all of us to uphold our chieftaincy together with feast, traditional answer, our customary laws and usage. Let's go back to our customary laws and usage and find out whether our customary laws and usage allows this behavior that we're talking about. Speaker, let's go back to our history. We know where we are coming from. As Ghanaians, our customary law and usage, where is it written or practiced that a man will sleep with another man or marry another man? Where? It's a taboo. It's a taboo in this country. You cannot even mention it. You cannot. You cannot. And therefore, we will not allow that regardless. We won't allow anybody to think that a sovereign country of ours like this will succumb to anybody to that extent. It will never happen. It will never happen. And for me, I am rather expecting that whatever the lawyers will put across, call it the Criminal Code 1963, if it has outlived its usefulness and outdated, let's go back to that law, do the strong amendment to them. and criminalize these activities that are inhuman. I saw when you go to the jungle. When you go to the jungle, the animals don't behave like this. Go to the jungle, a Chelsea warfare, go there and see if you see a grass cutter or an antelope male mounting another male. It doesn't happen. And as human beings, we must uphold our culture and tradition and uphold the principles of God and make sure that the good face of God will lead this country to wherever we want it to be. Our forefathers, this was not part of their vision. Let's go back to the history. It's not part of their vision. And who allowed that? It should not even come anywhere near this prisons of parliament anywhere, so that we say we are even going to talk about it. Rather, we should strengthen the laws, criminalize all those things, and make sure that we will go ahead with it. Nothing will happen.
Hello, welcome back from the break. This is Duke's View. A couple of issues I want to address this week. First of all, the leadership of Parliament deserves commendation for the swift manner in which they moved in to shut down Parliament for 3 weeks. Three weeks when the pandemic was at its height in Parliament. Over 100 people, close to 200 MPs and parliamentary service staff, auxiliary staff testing positive for COVID-19. Has all of its ramifications, and the positivity rate has actually reduced after 3 weeks. Rate testing was done. The whole process has been managed very professionally and very orderly. So of course, not every time that on this platform we'll bash Parliament and its leaders. When they do something that is good, we'll give them that commendation. So of course, we'll commend them for the orderly and professional manner in which they have handled this issue of COVID-19 Parliament, especially with the shutting down of the House and the recall, the rate testing, and the way they've managed that transition. I think it's beautiful. They deserve that commendation. But the icing on the cake would have been to, in all these processes that have been mentioned so far, the press in Parliament, I'm talking about the Parliamentary Press Corps, has been an integral part of the processes. So I've tested for coronavirus almost 6 to 7 times. Out of the 6 to 7 times, about 4 of these times I've tested in Parliament. Because anytime there's a round of testing in Parliament, because we work here as parliamentary correspondents, we have to be tested. But there is this discrimination that's rearing its ugly head that must be condemned by the leadership of the House. Now, with all the testing, we are part. But with the vaccination, members of the Parliamentary Press Corps have been taken out. And I don't think it's right, because members of the Parliamentary Press Corps belong to the parliamentary enclave, and we are all part of the whole system and the setup here. If there is, and I know some of my colleagues have tested positive for coronavirus and they are treating it. The first time some of them tested, even now have tested positive because of the work that they are doing. And so if there's opportunity for members of Parliament and those who work in the parliamentary enclave to be tested, to be vaccinated, why do you leave journalists out? I know Parliament requested for 6,000 doses, but they have been given 1,000 doses or 2,000 doses. But can all the 2,000 doses be exhausted on members of Parliament and their spouses and other people that are called priority? Press corps, members of the press corps are not even up to 100. I don't think we are a little over 70 or 80. Can we not be prioritized and added to this group to take the shot? Because members of the parliamentary press corps also require some form of protection or whatever that the vaccine presents. I think that this fight, members of the parliamentary press corps has been with Parliament all through, from testing and all of that. But now that there's a vaccine, members of the parliamentary press corps are being taken out on the vaccination exercise. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's fair. I think something needs to be done about that. Having said that, the coming week is a very, very important and critical week for Parliament. The President is presenting his message on the state of the nation on the coming parliamentary week, and then the budget is also coming in the coming parliamentary week. So we hope that members of Parliament would live by their conscience, do right by the Constitution which they've sworn, and the oath that they've sworn to, work in all sincerity and do the best for the country and for the people that they serve. On that note, we wrap up Duke's View, and by extension, in the chamber right here on Citi TV. Next week is a very important week in Parliament's life. The budget for 2021 will be read, as well as the message on the State of the Nation address from President Nana Addo Akufo-Addo. Until then, we'll see you same time next week on Citi TV. My name is Duke Mensah Opoku. Stay with us.